The COVID pandemic has just unleashed a tremendous boom in real estate in this area, real estate values. So many people have wanted to move into this area, that might have only thought about coming here on the weekends before, but with the pandemic and suddenly so many people shifted to remote work, property values in Ulster County went up by like 30%. I think it's important for land trusts like Wallkill Valley Land Trust and Scenic Hudson to conserve a lot of those open spaces and guide development to the cities.
We're seeing an increase in interest in our work, which is absolutely wonderful, and a lot of people reaching out wanting to support our work because they see the importance of it, and that's why they're moving up here.
It's only been the last couple of years that we've been spending so much time here, and with COVID that just amplified access to the land and the trails, seeing like they replaced the Forest Glen Bridge and just kind of seeing that close down and open up. I mean, all that stuff became such a tangible part of our lives the last couple of years because we were here so much more than we expected to be. And so that in many ways was a luxury for us to be able to work from here more than we anticipated, and has created a much quicker and deeper connection to the landscape.
My name is Christy DeBoer. I'm the Executive Director of the Wallkill Valley Land Trust. I've been here since 2009. My background is in English. My undergraduate degree is in English and British American Literature, and I moved up here to go to graduate school and ended up doing a dual master's degree at Bard College. So I have a master's in Science and Environmental Policy and a master's of Arts in Teaching. Back when my early years of my career, I did a lot of wildlife rehabilitation, and I found that protecting habitats for animals was very important. So being able to work now to protect lands for open spaces, trails, farms, habitats, clean air, clean water is super rewarding.
Well, when I moved to New Paltz 20-some years ago, I was doing conservation work, and I was really curious, what is this local land trust? What are they all about?
The Wallkill Valley Land Trust was formed in 1987. It was formed at the same time as two other regional land trusts, the Woodstock Land Conservancy and Roundout, and really focused geographically on protecting lands in Ulster County. Some of our first projects were the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail here in New Paltz and Gardner in 1991, and some open space protected areas along the Wallkill River. We protect nature for life, which is kind of a big deal. Our land protection work is forever.
This is the Smith easement. We have a conservation easement on this property, and a conservation easement basically puts restrictions on a property so we can't have anybody coming in and say building a development and putting extra houses on the property within certain reasons. So the Smith easement has a development area near the house, and they're allowed to change some things within that development area within reason. No sky rises or anything like that. And there is a second development area. Should they ever want to put a second house on the property, they could. And those were stipulations that the original owners that put the conservation easement on the property had decided on. So the rest of the property then is conserved for habitat. And one of the primary goals of this conservation easement was to preserve box turtle habitat. In addition to the box turtles that we do find out here quite often, we have barred owls that come flying through here. They've got some vernal pools on the property, so we have wood frog habitat and salamander habitat as well. So all of that habitat is protected for future generations to be able to enjoy.
I'm basically the boots on the ground person. I go out into the field and check on our conservation easements and the lands that we own, and to make sure that everything's going all right. Common things for us is maybe a neighboring landowner will cut some trees or something on the conservation easement, and then that has to go and be addressed because there were no tree cutting allowed on the conservation easement. So I just have to document any changes to the conservation easement, and that can be human-made changes, or it also could just be natural changes. So, for example, we had one property down in the town of Schwangunk where they were hit with a microburst, and just a whole bunch of trees were knocked over. But this is a change to the property, so I needed to document that change to the property.
Having a conservation easement on the property, the community knows that that property will always remain as it is now. It's very important we worked with willing landowners, so someone has to want to do a conservation easement on their property. We don't go in and take property and protect it forever. The landowners have to work with us. And we do have conservation easement acceptance criteria, so not every property that's brought to us will we accept. Sometimes it makes sense that the property is developed. Let's say it's a very small acre in the village of New Paltz, right in the middle of a lot of other housing. What are the conservation values on the property? And working together that discussion and creating a permanent document that will protect those things forever.
This is the first time I have ever dealt with anything like an easement. And the truth is, me and my wife purchased this house. It had the easement already attached to it. So I wasn't really part of understanding or being part of setting up the easement. So my first experience is we were looking to see if we could acquire this house. We'd fallen in love with it.
We owned property in Gardner, New York, about 65 acres. My wife, Ann, had been monitoring the eastern box turtles that seemed to be all over the property. And in the course of that 10 years or so, it tracked about 120 different eastern box turtles. We wanted to preserve their habitat too, so we got a hold of Christy DeBoer at the Land Trust and started working on an easement for the property before we put it up for sale.
We have not only conservation easements that we hold the development rights are, but we also own land. So we have 6 properties that we own, and they're publicly accessible. So we have easements on half of the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail. We own the other half of the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail, including the trestle in Rosendale. We own a 118-acre mountain, Joppenberg Mountain, in Rosendale, and we're working on removing invasive plant species, planting native species. Again, that helps with climate change and climate resilient habitats. And we're working on about 5 new conservation easement projects that within the next 24 months we'll be closing on, adding about 500 acres. When I was hired in 2009, we had just acquired the Rosendale and Ulster sections of the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail. And I remember at my interview they said, part of this is a steel trestle. It's about 940 feet long. We're going to restore it. Shouldn't be that big of a deal. The history of the region, especially the cement industry, was such a big part of this community, of the Hudson Valley, of Ulster County. Joppenberg Mountain alone was heavily mined for the Rosendale cement that is so well known. There's some amazing photographs online that show what it used to look like, and there also used to be historic ski jumps on the property, and you wouldn't know. You drive around, you see these big cement kilns. The history of those, not only are they cool to look at now, but how they were used and how the railroad was so important, and how those cement materials were transported to other places, especially down to New York City, to able to be used.
The Land Trust, they have a really important mission to protect this valley, basically. And I've watched them, grow over the years and take on new challenges that they're kind of like the little engine that could, in a way. I mean, they take on so much with only a couple of staff, and they get great results. So I was kind of watched them with the Rosendale trestle. That was an opportunity that was presented, and they jumped at it. And it was way beyond anything they had done before. But, they renovated that bridge, the trestle, to make it safe for the public. It was a dangerous place to be before they got involved.
The railings weren't very secure. There wasn't really this kind of railing here at all, right? It was a train trestle. They didn't have a railing for it. And it was just this old wooden ties, and that wasn't even complete. So there would be gaps in some of the ties, and there was no railing. So that wasn't really safe for people to be crossing all the time.
There isn't a set standard for creating a railroad bridge into a pedestrian bridge, so we were kind of figuring out things a lot for the first time. Now there's more of a standard, but figuring that out was complicated, even what type of decking to use. There's a standard for height and the width between the bars, but what do we want at the top? Well, we want something rounded so that nobody could drink on it. We enlisted folks that had carpentry background, construction background, and they were free on the weekends, and as hard as they worked during the week, they came out and helped us, and we had different teams and standing screw guns, and the planks were 17 feet long, recyclable commercial Trex, and so it was a fun recyclable material, fun to get out there with volunteers and do it, and just super rewarding to have people know that they helped put that decking in. We acquired the property, including the trestle, in 2009. We removed the old, it was decked halfway across with wood that was not up to any standards. We removed that in 2010. We had some general small steel repairs that had to be done, but really it was 2012 and 2013 where the major part of the construction happened. It was 4 years of my life, a $1.5 million fundraising project in partnership with Open Space Institute, and it was the most fun 6 weekends in a row installing that decking, all by volunteers. So every time I go out there, I look at that decking and remember how much fun that was. It was really fun. By the time we got done, it looks just like the walkway over the Hudson railing, and we could have just gone there and looked at what they did. We opened in June 2013 to the public. It was a good learning experience, but it was definitely the most challenging. Climate change is a really big part of our work. One of the things that we do with our conservation easements is we put in statements for restrictions and future allowable uses with some broad language. We don't know what agriculture is going to look like in 50 years, much less in 20 years at this point.
We're already seeing a climate shift. So the climate of Virginia 20 years ago is what the future of New York looks like. The response to climate change is twofold. One is mitigation of climate change, rolling it back. And the other is helping our world to adapt to climate change, because climate change is a reality. We have to adapt while we also try to roll it back, right?
So we need to make sure that the restrictions on the property allow for what changes may occur with climate change, but also perhaps slow down some aspects here regionally of climate change by having these properties not have a lot of impervious surfaces, allow for proper drainage, allow for trees and plants to grow, allow for the water to be safe. And those are very important as the temperatures rise.